Definitely going to be an investigation. A moment ago, we heard from Senator Roger Wicker on the Armed Services Committee in the Senate saying that there's definitely going to be an investigation in this. Now let's go to Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois. She also sits on the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator, thank you very much for joining us today. Is there going to be an investigation into this text chain, this signal conversation about imminent plans to strike Houthi rebels that inadvertently included a journalist?
Absolutely, there needs to be an investigation. The protocol here is very clear. Every single official on that signal chain needs to hand over their mobile devices so that we can investigate and look at and analyze their mobile devices. Pete Hegseth, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, all of them. And then we have to do an investigation. That's what would happen at the Department of Defense or the State Department were it any staffer that did this at some other incident. And so they need to follow the protocol. And we here in the Senate, especially on the Senate Armed Services Committee, needs to investigate what happened.
Do you have the authority to do that? And if you do, I mean, do you believe that Republicans are going to help you do it?
Well, I hope that they will do it. I'm encouraged that Senator Wicker is saying that there should be a hearing on it. Let's hope that they do it. But if they don't, I wouldn't be surprised because my Republican colleagues have basically rolled over on everything for the Trump administration. And suddenly the things that they were opposed to in previous years, they're okay with. I mean, look at, you played a clip of Mr. Walz earlier talking about this is laundering of classified information from a classified system onto an unclassified system when he was talking about a similar, Hillary having an email server. Well, this is exactly what happened. Pete Hegseth laundered classified information off of a secret system onto an unclassified platform.
Can I ask you a little bit more about Signal? I mean, reporters do use Signal. Government officials sometimes do use Signal. Do they use Signal to communicate about government secrets? How is Signal used by the government? Why do officials have Signal?
Well, it should not be used to transmit secret, right? It's classified information. It's kind of like saying, let's say we're not using Signal. Let's say we're using Microsoft Word. You have a classified computer that may have Microsoft Word on it, and you have an unclassified computer that has Microsoft Word in it. But you can't transfer the information from one to the other. And that's the same thing. When you're on a classified system, you can only use a classified communications platform. Signal is not one of those. Signal can be used in an unclassified setting, to communicate, but you should not be putting, like Pete Hegseth did, targeting data, sequencing data about an imminent attack on terrorists. That should never have been put onto an unclassified system. And he knowingly did this. He had to take this off of a classified system and put it into and upload it into the unclassified Signal platform. That is the part that is egregious. That's the part that is a national security failure. And that is what put the lives of our men and women in uniform in danger. Those pilots could have come under attack that night.
President Trump just said or implied that there's no system that's secure. He said the ones that are very secure are very cumbersome and don't work all the time. And they weren't right for this circumstance. He said Signal was right for this circumstance. Are there no systems in our government that are secure?
Yeah, he's not telling the truth. Each one of these cabinet secretaries actually have a secret classified system accessible to them 24/7. In fact, many of them will have one set up in their home so that if something's going to happen at 3 a.m., they can step into like a booth, into a special classified room. We call it a SCIF.
Why do they have that?
And they can have these conversations. They just chose to move this to an unclassified system. That's what happened.
Why do they have SCIFs at home? Why are SCIFs so important?
Because that is a verified classified system that is a closed system that cannot be hacked. So that is basically having a situation room in your home. They don't have a full situation room like in the White House, but they do have a booth-like system set up. They have computers with classified hardened networks that they're operating on. They have access to those 24/7. The Director of National Intelligence has it, the CIA Director has it, the Secretary of Defense has it, the Secretary of State has it. It goes with them everywhere they go. They could be in anywhere in the world, and it goes with them so that they can have classified conversations. And so basically, this is why it's so egregious. They have access to this, and yet they chose to move, in Mr. Walsh's words, launder classified information off of a classified system that they have access to and moved it over into an unclassified system.
Senator,
and we're okay with it.
I know you're running up against a wall here. I want to ask you one more question, and I ask this honestly and earnestly. Do they not care about national security? Why would they be using Signal? I'm sure they know that it's not the most secure way to communicate.
Both the mishandling of classified information and the deliberate destruction of federal records are potential crimes that ought to be investigated immediately. And I want to make clear that I'm of the view that there ought to be resignation, starting with the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of Defense.
Joining us now, former United States Ambassador to the United Nations and former National Security Advisor to President Obama, Ambassador Susan Rice. Ambassador Rice, putting your National Security Advisor hat back on, your reaction to this report?
It's stunning. It's likely the biggest national security debacle that any professional can remember. Let me explain a bit why this is so crazy. First of all, National Security Advisors convene what is called the National Security Principles Committee meeting. This is the cabinet-level group that makes the most important decisions and recommendations to the president on national security. It's all those people that are on that chat: the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, the CIA Director, and others. By the way, it's bizarre to me that it appears the acting chairman of the Joint Chiefs was not on that Signal chat. But in any case, the norm is that you call a meeting of the national security principles, typically in person, in the White House Situation Room, which is a very secure facility, in the basement of the White House. You can't bring your phones in, you can't bring your Apple Watches in, because all of those are devices that can be used by our adversaries to listen to what's going on. And then you spend hours, literally hours, interrogating the entire concept. Is this the right time? Is this the right plan? What are the regional security ramifications? What are the diplomatic ramifications? How do we ensure that we have prepared the allies? How do we communicate this to the public? This kind of planning for a military operation should be done very carefully and very deliberately, not on a Signal chat, not with emojis, and not without very careful deliberation. For the Trump people to be saying this chat shows how seriously they take the decision-making process makes me laugh out loud. I would share, as all my previous predecessors would have, very thoughtful, detailed, deliberate meetings in the White House Situation Room, probably multiple meetings. We would never get on a Signal chat, which is inherently insecure. They did this in all likelihood on their personal phones. They were discussing what is inherently a classified topic, which is whether and when the United States might launch military action against an adversary. There's no spinning that that's not a classified conversation. The very fact of the National Security Cabinet considering and recommending to the president a military attack is by definition classified, because you do not want your adversaries to know that information in advance so that they can prepare, evade, or attack American personnel in the process. So this is an extraordinary breach, even leaving aside the mind-boggling fact that they let a reporter into the conversation. They had an inherently sensitive, classified discussion about the most sensitive kind of information, war planning, on a non-governmental, non-secure, non-classified application. I can't get my head around it, Alicia, honestly.
With one participant participating, we now know from Moscow. Should Mike Walls have submitted a resignation letter today?
Well, let me say this. First of all, this absolutely needs to be thoroughly investigated. I can't imagine in any prior administration that a national security advisor, Secretary of Defense, and very importantly, the Director of National Intelligence and the CIA Director all know what is classified. Their job is to protect classified, that they all willingly participated without even batting an eye in a classified conversation on a non-secure, non-government application. I mean, frankly, nobody would survive that in any previous administration. Now, obviously, these people have utter disregard for norms and frankly, our national security, or they wouldn't have conducted such a sensitive conversation in this way. And obviously, since nobody balked at the notion that they would have this conversation on the Signal app, it suggests very much that they do this all the time, that this is their normal modus operandi. And now we learned today that Tulsi Gabbard was overseas. We learned Witkoff was in Russia. That's like just hand it to the Russians on a silver platter. You're sitting in a Moscow hotel room. Give me a break. And Alicia, people need to understand, we have ways of doing this. Every member of the President's National Security Cabinet, every national security advisor, when they travel, they have a team of communicators that go with them that set up secure communications by phone, by video, to enable people, if they're not present in Washington and in the White House, to communicate. Every single one of them has in their home what is called a secure compartmented information facility, a SCIF. It's like a room or a closet that has been specially tailored to ensure that you can have sensitive classified conversations in there and the equipment to do it. This is pure laziness, malpractice, recklessness, and probably also a desire to hide from the Presidential Records Act the legal responsibility to keep written communications that happen and between government officials and particularly national security officials.